Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan from Game Essays here, back with another Zelda tier list. Today we're going to be taking a look at Twilight Princess dungeons and ranking them. You'll also notice at the bottom of the screen there are some Wind Waker dungeons down there, but I actually did that in a previous video, so if you want to see my tier list for dungeons in Wind Waker, you can go check that out on the channel. But we're going to be focusing on Twilight Princess today, keeping in mind that we're going to be looking at specifically the dungeons, not necessarily the bosses. We will probably rank the bosses in a future video, but for now we're sticking to the dungeons themselves, the experience, the aesthetic, the theme, all of that, music, everything helps in ranking the dungeons. So let's get right into it. The Forest Temple in this game, I would rate the Forest Temple probably I'm gonna say a C. It's not really my favorite intro dungeon. The whole thing with the monkeys, it's a little bit slow. It's not the worst. The Gale Boomerang is a fine weapon, but overall it's not really a dungeon I ever look forward to. And maybe it's just a little bit too long for an intro dungeon too. It does take forever to get there, but that doesn't necessarily that is not necessarily something I would count against it. It took me a little bit to get that out there, but yeah, overall it's fine, but I don't love it. Goron Mines, I would probably, I would put Goron Mines at an A. I actually really like the Goron Mines. The iron boots, it was really cool to use it for like the magnetic effect. Sometimes you're going upside down, and overall, like, it does really feel like a mine. I really like the aesthetic of it. Overall, it's definitely probably my favorite early game dungeon. And for that, I definitely got to put it in an A. There's a lot of strong dungeons in Twilight Princess, and I think Goron Mines is definitely up there as one of them for sure. Again, I think the iron boots are really the standout, and I like, we had used them in Ocarina and Wind Waker for, going underwater, so it was nice that we got a different purpose for them. The Lake Bed Temple. Lake Bed Temple, I am going to probably put at a B. It's a dungeon that I think is really difficult for where it's placed in the game. It's the third dungeon in the game, but I seem to always find myself getting lost at one point. I'm missing some key somewhere, and it can be a little bit frustrating, but I respect the challenge of this dungeon. I respect the complexity for how it is early on. It always is making me think, which... even if it can be annoying at times, I appreciate that. So I think it deserves a spot at B. Some people might place it higher or lower. I know people either love or hate water dungeons. And I think it is, I definitely find it to be, probably because I've played it less, more difficult than the water temple in Ocarina of Time. But that's just because I've basically memorized the Ocarina of Time water temple, so it's not really a problem for me. But Lake Bed, it always seems to trip me up every time I play it. But again, it's I like that it's different. It's a different kind of water dungeon than we've seen before. Next up is Arbiters Grounds. Arbiters Grounds, I'm also going to put at an A, and that is mainly because of the theming of it. The beginning part with the pose, I'm not really huge on, because you have to play as the wolf, and the wolf, once you're able to transform back and forth, I think that it's a lot better controlling the wolf as Link. But the Poe part is the section I'm like not huge on. But again, I love the lore behind Arbiter's Grounds. I love when you get to do the spinner sections, and it's really fun to, even though it's an underused item, and that's been talked about a billion times, that once you get beyond kind of the pose section and move on, it is a much better dungeon overall. And again, the lore, it being kind of this prison or whatever it was, and then Ganondorf's execution happens there. There's the lore part is really what bumps it up for me, plus like the whole second half, as I said. So overall, I definitely put it up in an A. I'd put it below Goron Mines just because it's a little bit annoying, and it kind of is a little bit derivative of Ocarina of Time's Forest Temple with the ghosts at the beginning and all that. But overall, still really, really solid. So what do we have next? I believe it is Snowpeak Ruins, and Snowpeak Ruins is just going straight up into the S tier. This is definitely I think it's the best dungeon in Twilight Princess. I love the aesthetics, the theme. It's this castle that these Yetis live in. It's this mansion slash castle, whatever. And the story of like getting the ingredients for the soup, and then the Yeti's wife is basically cursed by this mirror, and how the whole story plays out is really great, and how the doors are kind of slowly opening as you get all the ingredients or whatever. And I just love this dungeon so much. It feels like this lived in place. And I think any dungeon that like it feels like a real place, it doesn't just feel like it's designed for the game, is always something that kind of takes it up a notch. And I think this dungeon is it's one of my favorite dungeons in any Zelda game, and absolutely without question belongs in the S tier. City in the Sky. City in the Sky, a lot of people aren't crazy about this one, but I know we're going slightly out of order now that I think of it. City in the Sky, though, I'm probably going to put at a B tier, since we're not really necessarily counting, we're not counting bosses. That would probably up it a notch, to be honest. But a lot of people hate this dungeon. I don't think it's that bad. The double claw shot's fun. It can be a little slow when you're kind of sitting there waiting for your moment to use your claw shots at times. But overall, I think it moves along fine for me. Yeah, it has a few moments, but it's a very satisfying dungeon. I don't know, when you complete it, you really feel accomplished, because there are some tricky things. You got to be pretty observant about where to claw shot certain things, and I think there's that part at the end where you have to like descend down with your claw shot. So overall, I think it's a really, really solid dungeon, though. I do like it. Temple of Time. Temple of Time, I would probably also put at a B. Aesthetics is definitely what brings it up. If we were, aesthetics and theming is what brings it up for me. If it wasn't reminiscent of the Temple of Time from Ocarina, I'd probably maybe bump it down to a C. But overall, it's really not bad. It's pretty linear, yes, but I kind of like the idea of you go through it all the way sort of to the end, and then you get the Dominion Rod, and then you have to escort that giant kind of statue back all the way through. So I do like that. It's a pretty creative idea. It is pretty satisfying to use the Dominion Rod to make the statue like smash a bunch of things. So there are some definite creative puzzles here. So overall, it's pretty cool. Again, the aesthetics and theming do really bring it up a notch. But for that, I think it sits pretty comfortably in B tier. The Palace of Twilight. Palace of Twilight, I'm going to bump this up to, I'd probably also put it in the B tier. Palace of Twilight, I think, is a really cool dungeon. It's very intense with once you have to get these balls of light backed out into the end of the level and put them in these certain places, but you have this weird hand that's chasing you trying to grab the ball of light back. So it can be very intense, but there's certainly times where it can also be really, really frustrating because of that. So for that, I think that's probably what I would bump it down a notch, just because it can be really frustrating. But I do love, again, the aesthetics. Also, it's really cool once your sword is able to clear away all the clouds of Twilight or whatever. So visually, it's probably one of the best looking dungeons in the game, especially in the HD version. And that definitely helps kind of bump it up a notch, the whole theming and aesthetics. For sure, it gets a lot of points there. So it's a little bit, it's not super complex. You kind of do one side, then you do the other side, then you go through the middle. It's pretty standard there, but for what it is, I think it's pretty solid. Hyrule Castle, I am going to throw up into the A tier. This is definitely one of the more epic Hyrule Castles in any Zelda game. I'd probably put it over Arbiters Grounds. I love the sections outside. You battle that big orc dude, that big moblin guy. And I think that's pretty cool. And then inside, you have a lot of battles with, the dark nuts in the game. The music is awesome. It's just it feels like an epic Hyrule Castle. It's kind of the Hyrule Castle we've been waiting for since A Link to the Past. We only get a little bit of Hyrule Castle in Wind Waker, so this is like the first time you have this grand Hyrule Castle in a long time, and we don't really see another one until Breath of the Wild. And that's still like a little bit different because it's not like a proper dungeon, but overall, I think it's a pretty epic Hyrule Castle. There's a lot of cool moments, and the build up to fighting Ganon is huge in this game. I love the music. You have the Hyrule Castle theme, but as you get closer and closer to Ganon, the Ganon theme starts to mix in with that. So the whole feeling of the dungeon is super epic. So definitely an A tier. So that pretty much covers all of Twilight Princess. You can see that Twilight Princess is definitely one of the game's like strongest in terms of dungeons. I don't have anything in the D or the F tier. And Snowpeak Ruins, of course, sits on its own in the S tier because I think it is just that amazing. But really, I mean, even these B tier dungeons are pretty damn good. So Twilight Princess, if it gets one thing right, it is dungeons. There's plenty of things I can rant about that I don't like about Twilight Princess, but dungeons is not one of those things. So that's my thoughts. Make sure to let me know what you thought about dungeons in Twilight Princess. How would you rank them? What's in your S tier? Do you have dungeons that you feel like in the D or the F? Do you not like the lake bed temples, things like that? Definitely let me know. Like I said, I already did this for the Wind Waker. If you want to see my thoughts on the tier list for Wind Waker dungeons, you can check out that video. I also started my proper kind of Zelda ranking series where I take a look at way more categories than just dungeons. And I started that with Phantom Hourglass, so that video is also on the channel. So if you want more Zelda content, you can definitely check those videos out, as well as a video I did on Zelda 2. That was my first video, so that's also up on the channel. So plenty of things to check out. If you enjoy this content, definitely make sure to subscribe. And thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again in the not too distant future.